green that you get, like a real green. So I've been looking at the grass to be like, what's the real green look like, you know? So it's actually been really nice to kind of be here. And you know what, I think they decided, let's give the American the nice easy talk on does God exist? So I'm going to talk to you today on this topic of does God exist? Is there a God? And when I think about this topic, I was in York last year at the University of York, and I was talking with a gentleman. And we were talking for probably 45 minutes. I think he was a physicist, and so he had a lot of questions. And I think about 45 minutes, an hour in, I finally said to him, I said, hey, you know what? I've answered a lot of questions. Tell me, what would it take for you to believe? And so he looks at me, and he's like, well, I need to see a miracle. I said, okay, so if I show you a miracle of somebody that I know who was in a wheelchair, paralyzed for 20-some years, and she began to walk after receiving prayer, would you believe? He said, well, no, actually, I would just attribute that to some kind of, the brain kicking in and the brain changing things. And I was like, okay, so what would you need? Well, I need some evidence. Like, I want some kind of evidence. I said, okay, well, if I give you evidence that the Bible is true, that it hasn't been drastically altered, and that we can trust that what we're reading today is what was written back then, would you believe? Well, no, but I'd find a reason to say that somebody lied and somebody forged it. And eventually it was just like, okay, well, what will it take for you to believe? What do you want? And I think this is a good question when it comes to this whole idea of proof. And when we look for evidence for something. So my undergraduate degree is in criminal justice, my master's is in social justice. So apparently I have this whole justice thing going. So I look at things from a criminal justice perspective in terms of investigation. So I'm going to kind of take you on a kind of smaller kind of investigation today. And just saying, when you do an investigation, you walk into an area, you may see, certain, let's say like hair, you may see a body, or maybe you can look for fingerprints or DNA, and you take the accumulation of all of these clues to make the best case. Say, based on everything that we have, based on what an eyewitness saw, based on what a neighbor said when they saw somebody entering the house, or anything like that, what people were saying, maybe we can come to what the best and most reasonable and most plausible conclusion is for something. And I think that's the approach that I'm going to take with you today. I'm going to talk about three things today. The origins of the universe, fine-tuning, and morality. And I think when we look at these three things, and we look at what is said about them, that they direct us towards the existence of God. So the very first thing I want to look at is the origins of the universe. Now, pretend that you are watching the news one day, and because I know we all have time to watch the news in between our schedules, but in theory, I always tell my mom, yeah, Mom, I'm keeping up with the news, sure. So, you're watching the news one day, and you see that there was a bank that has been robbed, and somebody stole 2 million pounds from this bank. So now the police go to the person's house, and who they think has committed this crime, and while there, they find a suitcase with 2 million pounds in it. So the police ask the gentleman, where did this come from? And he says, well, I don't know, it just came, it just happened, it was just there. Well, would the police be like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, that's crazy, things don't just pop into existence. Or what if you're walking through the woods, and in the middle of walking through the woods, you see a ball. Like, where did this ball come from? Now, when I was a kid, every time you went to the dentist, you could pick a prize. So I had this little thing for bouncy balls. I used to love bouncy balls, and I used to collect them. Red, sparkly, all kinds of colors. Do you guys know what bouncy balls are? That you bounce and it like flies like crazy places, and it's only like this big. So here you are in the middle of the forest, and you see this rubber bouncy ball sitting there. And you're like, where in the world would this have come from? Would any of us say, well, look what the grass made? No, right? In other words, anything that begins, anything that has a beginning to it, has a reason for its existence. In other words, a reason behind it. It's what has caused it to be there. We don't just think, that's the way we live life. We don't just think that things appear. So when we look at this question of finding something in the woods and seeing this little ball, what if we blew this ball up and now made it the size of the earth? Or the size of the universe? I'm not saying the universe is spherical, it's an illustration. What if we blew it up? Okay? And that, what we then say, well, how did this get here? It just popped into existence, right? Well, no, we wouldn't take that approach. So then we've got to stop and think about this. If this is true, that things don't just pop into existence, then if the universe had a beginning, then there must be a reason or a cause behind this whole beginning. So does the universe have a beginning? Well, back in the early 1920s and 30s, this actually became quite a hot topic. Science was pretty agreed upon at that point where they said, you know what, there is no beginning. It's always existed. The universe has always existed. So he comes along, French, or maybe he's Belgian, I could be wrong. George Lamarck. I'm probably saying his name wrong, so I'm just going to call him George. Because when I Googled how to say his name, it was like Lamarck. Then it was some beautiful French pronunciation, and it was going to epically fail on my part. So we're going to call him George for the sake of today. And he was an astronomer, he was a mathematician, and he was also a Jesuit priest. He was a Catholic. And using Einstein's findings and using Hubble's findings, he concluded that the universe began to exist. Because he said if the universe is still expanding, then at some point, if we just trace it back, if we just kind of reverse things, it's going to all come down to a tiny little point called the singularity. Well, this did not go well with Einstein, because Einstein was like, listen, first of all, we already agreed that the universe is static. It's not changing. It's already existing. But number two, if this is true, if the universe does have a beginning, then Einstein recognized that this is what the religious people were talking about. In the beginning, God created. And he didn't like that idea. But pretty soon, after more and more years and looking at it, even Einstein had to give in. And he said this. He says, once he accepted the truth that the universe had a beginning, he said, I want to know how God created the world. I'm not interested in this or that phenomenon, in the spectrum of this or that element. I want to know his thought. The rest are details. The rest are details. So we know the universe has a beginning. So if we know that things have a beginning, and we know the things that have a beginning have a cause, and we know the universe has a beginning, then what's its cause? Well, we can know a couple things about this cause. First of all, we know this cause has to be timeless because it created time. It also can't be changeless because change occurs in time. So this thing has to be outside of time. It has to be personal. In other words, it can't just be a machine that's been running all the time, because if it's been a machine that was running all the time that now creates this universe, then we go back to, well, what caused the machine to work? So that just brings us back to square one. In addition to that, it must also be uncaused. It cannot have a cause in and of itself. So we have timeless, we have uncaused, otherwise we can say what caused it, and then we have personal. In other words, we have this transcendent thing that's outside of our universe that would have made this. And I would say that thing is God. God makes sense of the origins of our universe. In addition, not only is it created, but it's sustainable for life. The universe is fine-tuned. I want to read to you just a quick definition of fine-tuning. It is the extraordinary balancing of the fundamental laws and parameters of physics and the initial conditions of the universe. Essentially, in nature, you find that the laws of nature are actually made of certain constants expressed mathematically, like the gravitational constant. But we have fine-tuning everywhere, from the energy levels in carbon to the expansion rate of the universe. And any change in this brings hostility for the possibility of life. So let me give you kind of an example of what that might look like. If I was to bring somebody here, and this illustration probably works better in my country than yours, if I was to give him a gun, and I said to him, okay, I want you to shoot a coin that I'm going to put at the other end of the observable universe, which is approximately 20 billion light years away. 20 billion light years away. And I say, there's a coin over there. I want you to stand here, and I want you to shoot it and hit it. The odds of him getting that is about what it is that the universe, to describe how the universe is so fine-tuned. Or how about this one? If you were to cover America with 1 billion coins that lead, or with as many coins, I should say, as it takes to get from America to the moon, so that's about 380,000 kilometers, or about 230 so miles. And if you were to do that stack of coins on a continent 1 billion times more, so we'll do 1 billion more on top of it, and then take one little red coin and shove it in there, and say to your poor friend, all right, I'm going to blindfold you. Now I want you to go find the red coin. Well, that seems like a mean trick, but let's just say that's what you do. That is the odds for that person to find that one red coin blindfolded, the odds that they would be able to, for the universe to be fine-tuned. Even I look at the rotation of the Earth. Something as simple as that. Something that, if the rotation was different, our winds would be different. our temperatures would be different. We wouldn't even be able to live. Or even the fact that if we were a little bit closer to the sun, we would burn, and a little bit farther away, then we'd freeze. How about something even a little bit simpler? When we look at the stars at night, the fact that we can even see them, the fact that we can even see the starlight. The universe is fine-tuned. Nobody's really going to argue that. But we need to understand, why is it fine-tuned? There's only three options: necessity, chance, or design. Necessity being, it just had to be this way. The universe is going to form, and it just had to be this way. Well, okay. Nobody really buys that argument, but we can leave it in there. Secondly, chance. What if it just popped into existence by chance? Well, since I love to give examples, Sir Roger Penrose, who is at Oxford, or was at Oxford, calculated the odds of Big Bang's low entropy condition existing by chance to be 1 part in 10 to the power of 123. So that's essentially 1 followed by 10 to the 123 zeros, which is not even enough particles in the universe to do the job. You don't need enough particles to be able to do that. God makes sense of the fine-tuning of the universe. I truly believe that it's not by necessity. I think by chance is really a stretch. But I think it's by fine-tuning, by an intelligent designer. The formation of the universe wasn't a random rolling of the dice, but a carefully, meticulously, and precise arrangement that not only allowed for the existence of planets and stars, but life itself. And that is what the fine-tuning of the universe is trying to communicate to us, almost as if it knows the answer to our skeptical interrogations of its origins. The fine-tuning. Lastly, morality. God makes sense of morality. Does objective morality exist? Some people would argue with me and say no. I disagree. You know, I think back to Auschwitz, one of Hitler's death camps, and to Dr. Joseph Mengele, who was the doctor in the clinic there. And he had a fascination with just trying out experiments on people, especially kids, twins even. And he would perform experiments such as freezing them to death and see what happened to people if he was frozen to death. He decided to try operations on people without any anesthesia. He decided that, you know what? What is it like really if I impregnate a woman with her brother or her father? And he helped to make a lot of women pregnant, not him personally, but through their family members that were in the camp with them. Incest, essentially. He encouraged it. Additionally, since his fascination with twins couldn't be calmed by anything, he decided one day, well, let's see if we can join twins together and make them Siamese twins. So he oversaw the surgery of sewing these two twins together to make them Siamese twins. And if that wasn't enough, he put kids in the oven until they died and threw them into burning pits. And vivisection was a regular thing that he did as well. If you're not familiar with vivisection, I wasn't either. I had to look it up. Vivisection is the performing of an autopsy on a woman. Or his case, it was a pregnant woman, but it's an autopsy on a person while they are still alive. These pregnant women, while they were alive, he began their autopsy. To dig into them, see their babies, see what's going on. Why is it when I talk about these things, people's faces change? Why is it the inside of us starts to cringe up and coil when we hear of the evil that people do? Why do we feel like this is just wrong? It's not something I have to teach you. I don't have to tell you this is wrong to not put a child in the oven and burn it. I don't have to tell you it's perfectly okay to see if somebody will freeze to death. You inherently, innately feel that this is wrong. Why? Why do we believe inside of us that there is an objective reality? There are certain things that are just plain evil. I believe that's because objective morality is true. Now, I'm not saying, you always say, okay, Alycia, so what you're saying to me is that in order for me to do good things, I have to believe in God? Absolutely not. I think you can believe God is not there, and I think you can do many good things. What I'm saying is, you have no basis as to tell me why your good things are good or where your good things come from. You can't tell me your good things are better than my good things. See, for the Christian, this is different, because for the Christian, what we would say is, we do things that are good, not because, well, they're just good in and of themselves, and not just because God says they're good, he says you should do this, and so therefore we say, oh, this is a good thing and we'll do it. We do good things because the good thing is a quality or characteristic of God. For example, being gracious to somebody is good because God is gracious. Forgiving something is good because God is forgiving. Love is good because God is love. See, once you remove God out of the equation, then there is no objective morality. And this is something that is a problem for naturalists. Because a purely naturalistic view would say that all that exists is what science can test or describe. They say that that morality doesn't exist because science is morally neutral. You cannot scientifically test morals. There's no way to do that. So morality is an illusion, or morals are an illusion. So then, all right, if morals are an illusion, if this is the argument that you want to tell me, then what you're telling me, and I don't believe this is true, that if any of us were in that clinic with that doctor, the angel of death doctor, any of us were in that clinic, and we saw him take a little child and put it on a rack and begin to shove it into an oven, that we wouldn't scream in horror, or we wouldn't try to save it. Or when we see him begin to perform surgery on someone alive, take out their kidneys and take out their parts of their body where they can feel everything, that we wouldn't say, stop. None of us believe morality is an illusion. We believe that there are things that are just plain evil and wrong. Now, I have a friend who's an atheist, and I got to give him credit because he's a consistent atheist. And he'll say to me, Alycia, I wouldn't try to stop you from that doctor putting that boy in the oven because I thought it was wrong. I would stop you because I don't think that's something that's good for the species. Okay. And you know what? To be honest, I tell him, I said, you know what? What I like about you is that you at least are consistent in your worldview. This is what your worldview tells you. Your atheistic naturalistic worldview, you are being fair to it. I said, but you know what? In the same sense, though, who's telling me who's going to tell me that what's right for the species is what you say? Dr. Joseph Mengele may have very well thought that this was right for the species. So you say, this is bad for the species. He says, this is right for the species. Aren't we just back at square one? Which one of us is right? We're back at the same place. Objective morality exists, and when we're honest with ourselves, we recognize that. God makes sense of the origins of our universe. He makes sense of fine-tuning. He makes sense of objective morality. But why does this even matter? I think ultimately, I talk to a lot of people and they say, Alycia, my life is fine. I don't really care. I don't really need God. I'm doing just fine on my own. My family's great. I'm healthy. I'm doing well in school. Why do I really need Him? And I think it's a good question. I think we need to ask these things. And while there's a long list, I'll just give you just a couple really quickly because I'm not going to hold up all your time. Number one, God gives us meaning. What is the ultimate significance of your life? Without God, it's meaningless. So people try and create meaning for themselves because they say, I can't live my life like this. I can't live my life without meaning. So I've got to create something. How about purpose? Why are you here? Is there a purpose for your life? Dust to dust we go. We are just a product of matter and chance. And I don't think I can do a talk without quoting Richard Dawkins, so in his honor. Richard Dawkins says, it is the genes that for their own good are manipulating the bodies they write about in. The individual organism is a survival machine for its genes. That's what you are. A survival machine for your genes. How about value, how you live your life. Whether you live your life as the angel of death, Dr. Joseph Mengele, or whether you live your life as somebody like Mother Teresa, for example. How you live your life. And I think most importantly, identity. Who are you? How do you define yourself? See, As a Christian, I can say, well, my identity is found in the image. Because I'm created in the image of God, which means I'm relational like Him. I'm loving, or all these kind of qualities that represent Him. But for someone who's not a Christian, then where's your identity come from? Is it by some subjective set of standards? Is it by what you do or what you say? Boy, that's really scary, because then it can change at any day and time. And then you really don't know who you are. But thankfully, I think there's an answer to. I don't think God has left us to kind of just wonder about these questions. I think He's given us clues and He's given us evidence as to who He is. And I think He's given us a way to be able to know Him. When I was in, for any Americans in here, I know there's a couple of them. When I graduated my sophomore year of high school, so that's about 15 for anybody who's not American, but school had just finished. I mean, I think it was like 2 days. And we were going, and I remember I was just sitting out at a restaurant, everything was great. I come home, and I find out news about a neighbor of mine. A neighbor and a student of mine. Some kids, because it was summer vacation, had decided to go to a canal. And so at this canal, it was this beautiful waterway, and there was, like cafes and things like that along it, but there was also a bridge. And so you kind of jump on the bridge, or go up on the bridge and jump from the bridge into the water. It was just for fun. That's what they did. They did it all the time. There's about 10 of them up there. And they're doing this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And a bicyclist walks by, or rides by, and he says, "What are they doing up there? I just saw a train coming." Because see, this wasn't just an ordinary bridge. This was a bridge with a live train that would go through it regularly. These are live tracks. So he tells the kids, "Get off the bridge." So they start running, and they start to get off the bridge, and the train is coming closer. They see it. And one of the young ladies who's wearing jelly shoes, I don't know if you guys know what jelly shoes are. I might be dating myself right now. But jelly shoes are kind of like these little plasticky kind of shoes. And she was wearing them, and when she was running, her foot got caught in the track. So her boyfriend was back, and he's trying to pull her foot out. And he pulls her foot out just in time for the train to hit both of them. He killed them both. I remember going to the funeral of the two of them. It was at 2 different times. And one of our economics teachers, had written on his casket, he said, "Legends die many deaths, but a hero dies just one." Legends die many deaths, but a hero dies just one. A hero dies sacrificing themselves for love. Sacrificing meaning that you are saying that my body, I'm going to sacrifice myself because for a greater cause. And he sacrificed himself for her. See, we may not all be Joseph Mangos and do these big evils, but I'm sure every one of us in here has done tiny ones. And there's consequences to the evils and the things that we've done wrong. Several consequences. Number one, it's caused a separation between us and God. Because He's perfect, and now we're not. But number two, it's confused us. We don't know what in the world truth is anymore. We don't know who we are. We don't know what morality is. We can't figure out anything. We don't know what to believe in. We don't even know who He is anymore. And we're confused. But this God says, "I don't want it to stay that way. I love you enough to fix things. And the way I'm going to fix them is through sacrifice." But why, Alycia? Why is sacrifice? What in the world does that have to do with anything? Why would He sacrifice? I'm going to give you one more illustration, and then I'll leave you guys to be. A husband and wife are sleeping in their bed one night. Somebody breaks into their house, grabs the husband, beats him, ties him up, grabs the wife, beats her, stabs her to death in front of the husband's eyes. Now this masked man runs out, leaves them there for the husband to just sit there in horror. After they do the funeral for the wife, the police give the husband a call and they say, "Guess what? We found the person who did this. We know who it is." And they tell the husband the name of the person. And the husband just breaks down crying because he knows who this person is. This person who's hurt him so much. Police say, "Just relax. We're going to go to their house. We're going to arrest them. They don't know we're coming. So we're going to go to the house, we're going to arrest them, we'll give you a call back later. Husband hangs up. And he gets in his car, and he goes to that house where the police are to get this person. And as the police get there, they're telling the suspect to say, come on out, come on out, come on out. So he panics and he starts running. So the police raise their guns and they begin to shoot. And just as they begin to shoot, this husband stands in front of this person, this attacker, and takes the bullets and dies so that the attacker didn't die. Well, he said, this is crazy. That's not a sacrifice. What kind of crazy story are you telling me? That's what you're thinking, right? This is a crazy story. Who's going to do it? This person beat him, and beat the wife, killed the wife, and he's going to take the bullets for him? But what if I gave one more piece of information? What if the reason why this husband's heart was so broken when he found out the identity is because the identity of that man was his son? Then we would say, that is an amazing demonstration of love. In spite of all the wrong that son did, that father still said, I love you enough, and I will die in your place. That's why there was a sacrifice. Somebody had to pay for the evils. Joseph Mengele, Hitler, Stalin, us, all of us, it's not going to go unpunished. Somebody had to pay. But God says, I'll stand and I'll take the bullets in your place. And that's what Jesus was. God saying, I will come and I will take the bullets for you. It's the best demonstration of love that he could ever show to you. A love that doesn't just say, you're very pretty, you're very nice. But a love that sacrifices. And a love that is a characteristic and a quality of God. Because God is love. There's cards on your table. There's a couple things on there. Basically, if this is kind of your first time hearing anything about God, if this is your first time coming to any kind of a Christian event or hearing Jesus, any of these things, then fill out the card. Even if it's your second or third time, fill it out anyways. Basically, we would love to stay in touch with you if you'd like. There's a section for comments, and there's also a box there that says, I'd like to find out more. If you'd like to find out more, check that box. If you are saying, you know what, this Christianity thing sounds pretty incredible, and hearing about a God who would sacrifice his love for me is something that I accept and I believe in, you can just write that in the comment section. Just say, I want to be a Christian. Just say something like that. I want to learn more. In the comment section, if you also want to write a question that you have about anything that, not necessarily anything I said or anything that maybe you've heard in previous times, feel free to go ahead and write that in that section as well. In the comment section. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. And then one of my friends, Raymond, is going to come up and we are going to answer some questions.